Have you heard of
Politician.com.
Well, if you're a freedom fighter,
Politician.com.
has heard of you.
Politician.com.
Keeps the world up to date on your battle for liberty.
Politician.com.
Ron Paul revolutionaries, free staters, Libertarian Party diehards.
Politician.com.
Helps get the word out about all three. Oh, and if you're a freedom lover in the Green or Democrat Party, Politician.com hasn't forgotten you either. Head to
Politician.com.
and see what you've been up to.
Politician.com.
Your institution jails people who are charged only with victimless crimes. I try to draw attention to that grievance by withholding information. Somewhere in here it strikes me that I must at least look a little bit like the Mahatma along about now, sitting cross-legged on a prison floor with only a strip of cloth around my waist. But the resemblance is more superficial than real. Mahatma means brave one, and I am not feeling all that brave. But the doctor gets the point. This man seems rational, he says, looking back over his shoulder. I see nothing wrong with him. If he's non-violently non-cooperating, I see no reason why he can't non-violently non-cooperate and close. I laugh at this. He says his name is Bob. I tell him he should quit his job. He tells me I must be a libertarian.
Politician.com.
He asks me a psychological question. Again, I refuse to answer it. He says, in that case, you're going to stay in paper. If I can't determine you're safe, you're stuck this way. I'm happy to tell you I'm safe, I tell him. Good enough for me, he says, and disappears. Now, one small step at a time, my situation begins to improve. For now, no more questions are presented. Shoes reappear. Another ill-fitting jumpsuit. Testimony to their continuing lack of height and weight information. My tormentor from the previous night returns, now more interested in debate than deprivation. First he parades back and forth in front of my cell, pretending to fire a machine gun into the air. He says, "Militia!" Apparently he has decided that I must be in one. We talk for a while about open carry and other topics. You never gave me your name, I tell him. Ralph DiFilippo, he says. I reply that he did not have to give me his full name. It's okay, he says. You militia boys can find me and we'll fight it out. I tell him I have no interest in that sort of thing, and he leaves. When the conversation resumes, I remind DiFilippo that I have never used violence since the day I punched a buddy in 11th grade. I say, but you probably use violence once a week inside your jail, so don't judge me so quickly. He concedes the point. We talk about the legality of so many controversial things in New Hampshire, the generally pro-liberty culture there, the unfair taxation in Massachusetts. As the hours turn into days, my tormentor begins to relax, to look after my interests somewhat, to serve as my best source of conversation. He returns to the cell every hour or so with questions about the liberty movement. We'll turn violent someday, he taunts. Everyone starts out with peaceful pamphlets, he says. You're going to be just like David Koresh. But, he admits grudgingly, you are stubborn. I ask him, of the people he has caged, how many are charged only with victimless crimes? I ask him if it is right to cage such people. He seems to at least concede that it is a valid concern. 2 days pass this way, each day an improvement over the one before it. I move into a relatively comfortable new room and salvage a book from the floor. The story of a beheaded princess flies into my head. Then my solitary confinement ends. I am displaced to make room for an inbound transvestite. Jailers remove me to an overcrowded cell full of beds and strangely healthy-looking infirmary patients. A prisoner who appears to be straight out of The Sopranos appears to be in charge and states the obvious. You look like you don't belong here. I don't remember the exact progression of the conversation, but I must have said something right. The condemned men love my story and pepper me with questions about civil disobedience. They learn that I write for a small libertarian paper. By the time DiFilippo returns to the cell, I have paper, pencils, and an audience. He finds me in the middle of the room, entertaining 9 of the prisoners, while a 10th sharpens my new pencil. What's going on in here? I'm leading a nonviolent revolution in your prison, Ralph. He doesn't seem very threatened, and that is as it should be. The mood has changed in here, one of the prisoners remarks later. I think it's because of you, Dave. I like this guy, says the crusty Sopranos character. But there is menace even in this friendly group. He could be a Fed, of course, the Soprano reminds his cellmates. A letter arrives, mailed the day I went into custody. Its author, angered into a sudden and fiery activism by my arrest, will go on to found the Manchester Free Press. I scribble parts of this article on her envelope. Evening falls, and 11 men of the American Gulag drift one by one from conversation to sleep. But on this last night, at least, the passage to sleep will be slow and reluctant, as stories and visions of liberty bounce from bunk to bunk.
Politician.com